Kian, it's been a minute since
Surridge.
You want some tea?
Nah.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another podcast. Charlie, I don't know about you, but it's been a very, very long time since we have recorded. We have 20 days or 19 days? No, 20.
I think it's 20 days.
Yeah, about 20 days until the NFL draft, the 2023 NFL draft. You guys know, if you've been fans of the channel, we obviously do draft. Draft content is arguably our most favorite thing to do on this channel. So we're going to be talking about wide receivers. We're going to go over our top 5 wide receivers, top 5 quarterbacks, talking about some smaller topics within that. We're going to go over Daniel Jeremiah's recent mock draft. As always, I'm Key McDermott. This is Charlie Nidell. If you guys want to check out our most recent mock draft posted by Surridge Kadali, make sure you go check that out. That will probably be posted 2 or 3 days by the time this comes out. As always, subscribe to the channel. Follow us on social media. All that stuff is linked down in the description because we will be posting a ton of draft stuff. If you're new to the channel, we are big on the draft. So if you're interested in that, we will be pumping out a ton of videos. But
Feeling good. I'm excited for draft season. I love draft season. I don't know if y'all saw we do a live stream for draft every season.
Right.
As Giants fans, we're excited
Super
for last
excited.
year. We had 2 top 10 picks.
As Charlie said, I believe I forgot to mention, we are going to be live streaming the first round of the draft as we've done for the past 2 years. So make sure you guys subscribe. That'll be April 27th, day of the first round. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. We do a huge live stream. It's a ton of fun. Talk to the viewers and stuff like that. So make sure you are here for that. But Charlie, let's get into our first topic. Go straight into it. We're going to go to quarterbacks. We're going to talk about our top 5 quarterbacks. But first, I want to talk about Anthony Richardson, quarterback out of Florida, who we'll talk about again when we go into our top 5 quarterbacks. But just a guy who I was doing my quarterbacks this past week, and a guy who I really fell in love with. I think you look at the traits this guy has in terms of size, athletic ability, what he did and only starting for a year at Florida. But I definitely think there's a wide spectrum. Some people don't have him in his top 5. I have him in my top 5. I'll obviously reveal where in my top 5. But when you look at Anthony Richardson, what are your thoughts on him as a prospect?
I see an incredibly raw player. All right, this is a player who he's got great physical attributes. There's no denying it. He is, built like a god. He's 6'4", 230 pounds roughly. I don't know exactly what he clocked in at the combine, but this guy's fast, like the fastest quarterback in this draft class. He is also got the strongest arm in this draft class, debatably, but probably him. This guy, physically and athletically, is the best quarterback we've seen in probably a few years since Lamar Jackson.
And even then,
maybe he goes back even as far to say Cam Newton. This is a physically talented guy and athletically gifted. Where I struggle with Anthony Richardson is the technical side of the game. He is a good passer. He's got a great arm talent.
Yeah.
But refining that talent into technique and into anticipation, mechanics, that's where it starts to get a little sloppy. Richardson's got, some of the worst mechanics in the draft class. Yeah. And that's not just of the top 5 quarterbacks in the class. That's, if you look even deeper into the draft class, Richardson, happy feet in the pocket. He's way too quick to roll out and use that speed, which it's not a bad thing to use his speed early on when you're as fast and as big as he is. But, quarterbacks who tend to use their speed more and earlier in their career and end up having shorter careers. And it's a worry with him that his mechanics when in the pocket, his anticipation, his pocket presence are not quite on par with some of the other quarterbacks I have before him. And that's, for me, the main reason I don't have him as high as them.
And I think when you look at, and this, I was watching a podcast the other day, I think this is a really good point. When you look at the raw quarterbacks we've seen in the past years, and I guess we'll just go back to last year's draft class because the quarterback class was not very good. Like Malik Willis.
We all thought it was going to be pretty good.
We all thought it would be pretty good.
Malik Willis, everyone had, he's a top 5 guy, top 10 guy, and he went in the 3rd round.
Exactly.
NFL teams saw through it,
you look at some of the raw guys, I guess Matt Corral, Malik Willis. Anthony Richardson, to me, when you look at raw prospects, is so much above the average raw talent. Like, you look at this guy, to me, and I was really high on Malik Willis last year. I've always been a guy who really likes the raw prospects, who I think they can be refined. And obviously, a lot of people are mocking Anthony Richardson to Indianapolis. They have Shane Steichen. We saw what he did with Jalen Hurts, why he's so successful in Philadelphia. And imagine if you can get Anthony Richardson to that level, he would be that much better than Jalen Hurts. But again, I think what I really like about Anthony Richardson is I think he has the building blocks. He has, I think, the best arm in this class. I think when you combine strength and, I guess, his accuracy wanes, but
His
it is
accuracy
good.
wanes.
But it's and I think that's obviously I think best raw arm. Again, raw will come up a lot when it comes with Anthony Richardson. But again, pocket presence, again, like you said, a lot of the quarterbacks in this class, besides Bryce Young, have very bad pocket presence, which I find very concerning because that's generally a given for a good quarterback. But again, we've seen, obviously, the top guys in this class not struggle with that. But again, Anthony Richardson, I think you're right. Like downfield, intermediate routes, when you look at the tape, it's just a little too jumpy. And it's a guy who needs to get coached, like all raw quarterbacks. But I think even at Florida, he was in a very NFL friendly scheme, like 7-step dropbacks, and played with a lot of receivers with NFL route concepts. So I think he has the building blocks to be a good guy. But I guess what we'll talk about here is, do you think he's a nailed on first round prospect? Which I feel like he is. I feel like even if you don't like him, I think he is, just because I think NFL teams will take the shot, because I think he's a guy who has to sit behind for a year. But do you think he's like a top 10 guy, or he'll fall deeper?
I think this is a solidified first round prospect, because as low as I am on Richardson, the potential it's too hard to ignore. Okay, it's impossible to ignore the potential this guy has. He's a sophomore right now.
Yeah, exactly.
A 1-year starter, and when you see his rushing stats, the passing stats aren't super pretty, but that was at Florida. They didn't have great weapons this year. Kyle Pitts is gone,
right.
Wan'Dale Robinson, guys like that, or like, no, sorry, not Wan'Dale Robinson, but they didn't have
Kadarius
great
Toney,
weapons.
Yeah.
Toney,
he didn't even have.
He
those
wouldn't
guys.
have seen those guys, and those are the best weapons they've had in a long time. So Richardson did not have the greatest of weapons, but for me, this is not a top 10 pick, because I don't see the upside being worth it. I think when you try and compare this to a guy like Jalen Hurts, it's a really hard comparison, because Jalen Hurts was a second-round pick and was
he?
much...
I thought he was third. Was he third?
Second or third. I think he was a second-round pick to the Eagles. But Jalen Hurts was a much less raw prospect. I think he was still raw in the sense that he still needed coaching, but all the quarterbacks coming out of college need coaching. And Jalen Hurts was a 2.5-year starter with Alabama and with Oklahoma. He went to multiple national championship games as either the starter or the backup, and Richardson did not have that same success.
And even Hurts, he doesn't have the expectation. Like Richardson has a ton of expectation.
And Richardson's
going
not
into
got a lot of
this.
expectation. Hurts does not have the same arm talent, same physical ability as Richardson. So people were a lot lower on Hurts, and then he's excelled so far. So I think it's hard to find a comparison for Richardson right now.
Yeah, I don't
my
know.
closest one, and it's a hard one to make, is Malik Willis, because Malik Willis is, compared to the rest of the quarterbacks in the class, I mean, it's the closest one you can find. Malik Willis is your talented scrambler who's got a great arm, but still needs a lot of work. And he didn't exactly perform well last year. I mean, he was hurt for a lot of it. He was backup for a lot of it. Josh Dobbs was given the nod over him for multiple games.
And I've even seen people mock Richardson to Tennessee because it's Tannehill's last year, and a lot of people think that.
I think it's a difficult. I think Richardson is too risky and too raw of a prospect to take in the top 10 for me. I think he's too unnatural of a quarterback. I think this guy looks more like a running back. He's like Justin Fields in a lot of ways.
Yeah. I mean, just when you talk about comparison, it's impossible. I have a comp for all my players. I don't have one for Anthony Richardson. I just had no, I really just didn't know because he's like, and I've seen a ton of people say this. It's like when you go into a Madden franchise, you create a My Player. Like, he's the guy.
Yeah.
6'4", 232. You just don't see that. Like, that is physically huge for a quarterback. But I love the upside. I'm buying into it. I obviously see where people are coming from, and not selecting him in the top 10. Again, this guy's not a day one starter, so we're not going to see the Panthers or Texans taking him. I would be blown out of the water if either of these teams decide to take him. I don't think that'll happen. Obviously, I think there are two better guys than Richardson right now. But I think the Lions, I think the Colts, again, I talked about Shane Steichen. I think that would be a fantastic pick at 4 for the Colts. But I think I might like Levis a little more to the Colts. We saw he did just work out with them. But I really like the Lions there. I think you sit behind Jared Goff, who I've talked about, who I really like. I think a guy who's underrated. And then you have David Montgomery, you have DeAndre Swift. That offense would be fantastic. All right, so Anthony Richardson, speaking of quarterbacks, we'll move right now into our top 5 quarterbacks. Me and Charlie both have our top 5. We graded them a little differently. I have a grade for all of them. Charlie will probably soon. But again, so when we grade these quarterbacks, again, like I said, go over our top 5. Grade on deep accuracy, mobility, arm strength, pocket presence, durability, processing, progressions, short accuracy, and play extension. Charlie,
yeah, I mean, mine are pretty similar.
Yeah, it's like that.
It's accuracy, vision, leadership, arm strength, pocket presence, anticipation, mechanics, and size.
Perfect.
I think size is one that kind of only factors into this year.
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually that big of a deal. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So we'll go over our top 5. We'll kind of just trade off. But I think we both have – actually, no, we both have the top 1 because I forgot we don't have the top 2. At 1, we both have Bryce Young.
Yeah, Bryce Young. I think I have him graded higher than you do.
Yeah, I have him at a 91 out of 100.
This is the best quarterback or the best player in this draft.
Yeah.
It's not even close. I mean, I'll say it is close because we've got guys like Will Anderson on the
Jalen
defensive
Carter.
side.
I think
Carter
talent-wise, you can argue those
but
guys.
I've got this guy sitting at roughly a 96.
Jeez, yeah.
There are not many faults that you can find in Bryce Young's game, and where there are faults, he makes up for them in some incredible attributes like his pocket presence, his vision. He's just an unbelievable quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, there's really, like, with Bryce Young, and I'm sure if you guys watch draft content, this guy you've been hearing about nonstop, the only knock is his size. I did not know he was 5'10". I thought he was 6.
Well, he clocked in at the combine at 5'10". I mean, everyone thought he was 6.
Yeah, which is very, and again, like, I hate, because every draft, every quarterback, like, they always have that knock. Like, 5'10" to me is just really, really small.
They find somewhere to knock the quarterbacks. Last year was Kenny Pickett's hands.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
This year's Bryce Young's size.
But Kenny Pickett's hands did kind of play a role.
I don't think they played a big role. I think Kenny Pickett had a relatively successful freshman year, and I just don't think. I think Bryce Young, the size is not going to come into play as much as people think it is. Yeah,
I agree. I think it worked at Alabama. I think, again, there's always that learning curve in the NFL. But to me, for Bryce Young, depending where he goes, like if he goes to Carolina or if he goes to Houston, I just don't think he'll have a successful first year. I think neither of those teams have a ton of weapons for him. But again, that's kind of my thought process. But like you said, I mean, no holds. You look at my grading. I won't tell you. I have a B+, B+. For durability, I have a C just because of his size. Then I have A, B+, A+, A, B+. Like this guy has really no holes that you talked about. Fantastic arm, can make all the throws even though he's that size, so I don't think NFL teams will have. The only question mark with the size is just that he's short. Maybe it's injury concerns, but
I think the only spot the size deters is with the injuries. I don't think it affects his game very much because when you have a quarterback like that with the pocket presence that he has.
Oh yeah,
his pocket presence the second he enters the league, his pocket presence will be top 5 in the NFL.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
Potentially top 3. This guy knows how to move around in the pocket. His footwork is impeccable. So he's moving around in the pocket, and he's doing it efficiently, and then he's got the arm to make all the throws. So I don't think the size knocks him during play. The only problem is he's taking NFL hits. And SEC hits are hard hits, but NFL hits are a lot different. And I think that there's potential for injury, but we'll see how that. It's so hard to predict that in a model. And
I think and we'll go into guys like Anthony Richardson, who we just talked about, CJ Stroud. Like you look at this guy's pocket presence, and it just makes, I think for me, just puts him that step above. Like it's fantastic. Like he feels pressure, doesn't look at it, is able to maneuver out the pocket. His play extension is fantastic. Like I said, he can make all the throws, off platform, all that stuff. Like he has it all. When you talk about a guy like Bryce Young, like there's just no holes. Like, we can talk about him as much as we want, but I feel like the guys who are interesting and we talk about the most have a little bit of holes, a little bit, like there's no argument around Bryce Young. Like everyone knows what you're getting from him. So it just depends on if he's 1, if he's 2, but he will be the 1st or 2nd overall pick. So I think that's nailed on. We'll go to our number 2 quarterback. I have Anthony Richardson.
I got CJ Stroud here. For me, this one's an easy one.
Yeah, and so here's the thing. This is, and again, I might flip it. I have Anthony Richardson graded lower, and this is where I got killed because I posted on our Instagram my grades. I have Anthony Richardson graded lower, and I have CJ Stroud as my 3. And this is, it was simply because I liked Anthony Richardson more. I was ranking him above him just because of the potential. But we already talked about Anthony Richardson, so let's talk about CJ Stroud. And then we'll kind of compare the two of them. We'll go CJ Stroud, and then we'll talk about him against Bryce Young, and then we'll go through the rest of our 5. But when you look at CJ Stroud, I mean,
we talked about Anthony Richardson's arm. CJ Stroud has the best arm in the class.
Yeah.
It's when you combine power and accuracy, CJ Stroud's arm is the best in the class. You go back 2 years, it's still the best behind Trevor Lawrence. Trevor Lawrence has the best arm we've possibly ever seen.
Yeah.
But, CJ Stroud, it's hard to find faults in his arm, and where you don't really find faults in CJ Stroud's game in general. He's a less top end quarterback, I think, in a lot of ways than Bryce Young, but I don't think there are any weaknesses in his game. I think he's another guy that you know what you're going to get when you draft him.
Mm-hmm.
I think if there's one knock I have on CJ Stroud, it's anticipation looking downfield. I think a lot of the times he maybe doesn't see corners coming, doesn't see safeties coming. He puts his receivers in bad positions, but it really doesn't happen often. He's throwing to top caliber wide receivers. He's a top caliber arm. He's got 2 offensive tackles that are going to get drafted in the first or second round this year. He's surrounded by a great team at Ohio State, and he showed it. He threw 41 passing touchdowns last year. There are not many knocks on this guy. I simply have him behind Bryce Young because Bryce Young is Bryce Young is that number one. C.J. Stroud could be a number one in almost any other year. I mean, I have him graded at an 89, which I think is a very good grade.
Yeah, I have 88.
Stroud.
Yeah.
I think he's a really good quarterback. I don't have any knocks on C.J. Stroud.
Yeah, I agree. I think, again, and I think what teams may look at as that size, he's 6'3", 213, so, again, a big dude. And I think what Surge said in his most recent mock draft, where I think he mocked C.J. Stroud first to the Panthers, is, like, this guy, if he didn't have that game against Georgia, he may have been falling down draft boards. But obviously that game he showed what he can do against a fantastic defense, one that's going to be as close to what you'll get in the NFL. But, yeah, I mean, I agree. The one thing for me with C.J. Stroud is the pocket presence, with which Bryce Young has. Like, for me, my grade, I have A, A-, A, B+, B, and then for pocket presence, I have a C+, and then A. I think for me, C.J. Stroud is the kind of guy who will make all the, like, you know what you're getting. I agree. I think there's not many knocks you can have. Like, he checks so many boxes, and I think it's the same with Bryce Young. I think it really just depends on who you want, who fits your scheme more. But I do think in terms of that polishedness, like a guy who really just, like, a talent who you just know is going to be fantastic. Like, I think for C.J. Stroud, there's that little bit of a chance. And I guess you have to say it for Bryce Young because he's 5'10". But I think there's that little chance that they don't succeed. Obviously, that's every NFL prospect. But I think C.J. Stroud is a little more room for error.
I think, a pretty similar prospect coming out of college a couple years ago in Zach Wilson.
Right.
I love C.J. Stroud way more than I liked Zach Wilson at that point. But I know a lot of people were really high on Zach Wilson, including Surge and a lot of Jets fans and a lot of people who were expecting to get him. But I think it's a very similar prospect, size-wise, arm talent. And Zach Wilson didn't pan out. I think C.J. Stroud is better.
Yeah.
I think he has a much higher chance of succeeding. I think this is a guy, again, not many faults. And I think you know what you're getting, and this is a good player.
Yeah, I agree. And I think, it's just he's a little more erratic than Bryce Young. He's a little more, he doesn't sense pressure as well. Like, Bryce Young is just that little more refined. But C.J. Stroud has a size, so it depends on what the team wants. But when you look at both of them, who do you think will get taken over Bryce Young? Or who do you think will get taken first? Because I think the Panthers will take the shot on C.J. Stroud over Bryce Young. And I think it's a better fit. I think if Bryce Young went to Carolina, he just wouldn't be as successful as he would if he went to Houston.
I think Bryce Young could be successful anywhere he gets drafted. Alabama's known for having their powerhouse rosters. They didn't have one last year, and Bryce Young still took them to, I believe, the 5th-ranked team in the country.
Yeah.
They didn't make playoffs. They had some bad games, but, Bryce Young still threw 32 touchdowns and 5 picks. I mean, this guy is incredible. And I think that while C.J. Stroud might be a better fit with the Panthers, I've seen a lot of people saying that the Panthers and Josh McCown prefer C.J. Stroud.
Yeah.
But for me, I think Bryce Young is enough better than C.J. Stroud that any team picking first should take Bryce Young. I think you're automatically getting a few wins. I think Bryce Young in this draft is like your Trevor Lawrence of a couple years ago. While Zach Wilson may have been a better fit at the Jets, right, Trevor Lawrence is just the better player. And you have to take a guy like that. And we've seen how it's gone for Trevor Lawrence. I think the Jaguars are a better organization right now than the Panthers. And that's helped them succeed, especially with the addition of Christian Kirk, which I don't think the Panthers are going to do next year. I think Bryce Young has to be the number 1 overall pick.
Yeah, I agree. I think when you look, I like the fit with C.J. Stroud. I like the pick for the Panthers to take C.J. Stroud. I think Bryce Young on the Texans and C.J. Stroud on the Panthers would just make a little more sense. But again, obviously the Panthers traded up to the number 1 pick, so it's going to be quarterback, and I think the Texans could be quarterback. But a lot of people are saying the Texans might not want to go quarterback, although that would really just make no sense. Yeah, but again, I think when you look at both the players, it really comes down to, I think the scheme fit's going to be the most important, and then I think if you're an NFL scout, it's going to be, does size play that big of a role? And I think if it does, I can't blame them because, it's obviously you're wasting a top 2 or first overall pick on this guy. So I think that's going to make a big change. And obviously you're hoping this guy's your cornerstone to build on for the next decade or two. So I understand both picks. I think one of these guys will be the first pick, I would hope, because I think the Panthers will go quarterback. So I think it's, you can bring it to the bank with that. Like, it'll be one of these guys, but I definitely think it's a tough one. Like, I think we're going to go into draft day, and I think we're going to have the same opinion here. Like, we're not going to know who it's going to be.
We won't know, and I think they'll take all the time in the world.
I think they'll take all the time in the world.
Because this is their franchise quarterback for the next 10 years, hopefully. This is a big decision.
Exactly. So I think that's what it'll come down to. But obviously, so I had Richardson at 2. Who is your 3?
I got Will Levis as my 3.
And I have Will Levis
we
at my
talked
4.
enough about Richardson earlier, so I'm just going to say why I think Levis is up there. I think Levis, when you look at the stats, did not have the best of seasons. 2,400 yards, 19 touchdowns, 10 picks is not great. Kentucky was terrible this year.
Yeah, Kentucky were very bad.
And a lot of that gets attributed to the quarterback, but they just did not have a very good team. This is where Wan'Dale Robinson left.
Yeah.
Will Levis is a 2-year starter here. He was excellent last year and just not as good this year. I think Levis, when you look at the arm talent, this guy also has a really strong arm. It's up there with C.J. Stroud. It's up there with Anthony Richardson. I prefer the less raw Will Levis towards Anthony Richardson. I just think that you're getting a more, when you're taking in the top 10, you're getting a more secured pick. And, there are 2 ways to think about this. Obviously, there are people who think in the top 10, this is where you're reaching. This is where you're looking for your guys with a super high potential, super high risk, super high reward. Like, as you said, for me, this is a more, if you screw this pick up, it's going to come back to haunt you for years to come. We've seen it happen. Sam Darnold, Zach Wilson,
Baker Mayfield,
so many quarterbacks, but there are so many quarterbacks that were taken in the first top 15 or so. Josh Rosen, who just have not panned out, and it's such a risky pick. And I think this is where you go with your guy who, Will Levis, has the potential to take them into the playoffs, make a playoff run eventually. This guy could be a Pro Bowler for 10 years of his career. He's a really talented guy.
Yeah.
I have him graded at an 83, higher than Richardson. But I think this is a good player, and you know what you're getting when it comes to Will Levis. And you don't know what you're getting when it comes to Richardson.
Yeah, I agree. I have him graded an 82, but again, when you look at the key traits of a quarterback, I have him A for deep accuracy, A for arm strength. I think his durability is fantastic. This guy's the best at reading coverages and understanding coverages in the class out of all the quarterbacks. I think Bryce Young, but I think when you look at Bryce Young, to me, one of the main hits was he got a little confused when they did disguise zone coverages, where I think Will Levis has been fantastic throughout his career, and I think a lot of people thought he was kind of this dumb, big quarterback. But again, you look at size-wise, 6'3", 232, this dude's huge.
Yeah, I think he clocked in at 6'4" at the combine.
Maybe 6'4", yeah. He's big. You look at Anthony Richardson, this dude's really, really big. He's just white. That's basically that's the difference. That's not the difference, but obviously he's more mature. I think you look at all these guys, juniors, 21. This guy's 23, and I think you can see that on the tape.
Yeah,
I agree. When you see it at Anthony Richardson, you see a more mature quarterback. Obviously, this guy is a senior. Most of these guys are juniors competing with him, but I just really liked him. I agree. I think you know what you're getting. I think he's just a guy where you look at some of the tape again. It's just when you look at Bryce Young, it's more refined. Will Levis, to me, it's just the accuracy problem with me. Is there's a little bit of an accuracy problem with him, and I would even say like a pretty big accuracy problem, which I think needs to be coached. And unfortunately, accuracy is kind of one of those things where you just need to learn. Accuracy is that's like your height. You can't do anything about it. So it can be coached a little more than your height, but it's definitely one of those things that are a lot more hard to change as opposed to scheme fit or reading coverages. But I think he has all the tools, and like you said, he's not a raw prospect. I think this guy could be very successful. This guy could be a day one starter. Anthony Richardson couldn't. So I think a lot of teams will look at that, and that's why I like him. I like Richardson more, but I think Will Levis should go before him if you're the Colts. Just because the Colts don't have a guy.
Makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, exactly. But
you give him a top tier running back like Jonathan Taylor that for his rookie season he can just sort of sit behind and give him the ball.
Yeah.
And then you got receivers like Michael Pittman. I think it's
good. Yeah, exactly.
It's a really decent fit for Will Levis. I think their offensive line will protect him well. I like Will Levis to the Colts at whatever they
and it's very funny because my pro comp for him is actually Carson Wentz, and a lot of people are like, you think he's good, but you compare him to Carson Wentz. Carson Wentz was a fantastic quarterback.
Coming out of college, he was
very good, and he played didn't make it to Super Bowl, got injured, but MVP contender. Carson Wentz, very much before injuries, was a very good quarterback. He was a winning quarterback. So I think Will Levis could be that kind of guy.
The tough one there is the running ability.
Yeah,
Levis is not your big scrambler. Carson Wentz ran a lot, and that's why he got injured so much.
But he's not like a Jared Goff, a mobile type quarterback.
No, right? But I would see Will Levis. He's not gonna run. Okay, you have guys in the league like Justin Herbert who are pocket passers, but when they take off, it's hard to catch them.
Josh
that
Allen,
guy's
right,
fast,
yeah.
and Josh Allen has a lot of designed runs in the game. Justin Herbert's my perfect example of that. He's fast, and Will Levis I don't think is that fast. I don't think Will Levis could be that kind of quarterback. I think Will Levis is more of a Jared Goff kind of passer when he gets to the NFL, or a Matthew Stafford.
Right.
Or
I've seen the Matthew Stafford comparison.
He's not going to be running a lot, especially in an offense with Jonathan Taylor. I don't think they're going to be giving the ball in Will Levis's rookie season in his hands to run the ball. I don't see that happening. I don't think he's fast enough or reliable enough runner for that to happen. He can run through guys on a QB sneak.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I wouldn't put him out in the open field.
Right. So we'll move down to so you have Anthony Richardson at your 4.
Yep.
And again, just to go over the rankings if we've been confusing, we both have Bryce Young at our 1. You have CJ Stroud at your 2. I have Anthony Richardson at my 2. I have CJ Stroud at my 3. You have Will Levis at your 3. I have Will Levis at my 4. You have Anthony Richardson at your 4. And then we both have, you have Tanner McKee.
Yeah, Tanner McKee at 5.
And then I have Hendon Hooker at 5. So Hendon Hooker to me, again, and where do you have, because you've done all 10.
I've got Hendon Hooker at 6.
Okay.
It's a very close 6.
So Hendon Hooker to me, I actually really like. I've seen a bunch of people mocking him in the first round, which I think is tough. I mean, this guy's 25. He's older than a lot of the younger quarterbacks in the league. But again, I mean, like the size of these guys, 6'4", 220, like he has the perfect size. Obviously, I think this guy will be a first-round pick. He unfortunately tore his ACL this past season, but he's supposed to be back by August, I believe.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
So hopefully that's when we see him. But this guy to me, and I have it in my notes, like he's a solid B-level prospect. Like this guy will be fighting for a backup job in the NFL, and I think he could end up making that starting role.
So would you take that in the second round?
Yeah. I think I like Hendon Hooker. I think this guy could be a starting quarterback. I don't think people are drafting him to be, whereas all the guys we've talked about above, people are drafting them to be a starting quarterback. Yeah. But like again, I have him like B, B, C, B. Like I have him in the Bs, where I have all the other quarterbacks have a good 3, 4 A's in their game. But I really liked him. I think you looked at Tennessee, like obviously he was very successful at Tennessee this past year. And again, he's 25, so you can obviously attribute that a little bit. Yeah, Jalen Hyatt, like a very good team. But I like Hendon Hooker. I don't have much to say. I think this guy will be drafted to be a backup. He'll fight for a backup job. And I think he'll be the kind of guy where it's like maybe a Jalen Hurts where someone gets injured and he's put into that starting role and hopefully he succeeds. But I do like him. I'm definitely rooting for him. Obviously really unfortunate that he tore his ACL, but hopefully he'll come back and be better than ever.
Yeah, I have one concern with Hendon Hooker. I don't think there are many knocks on his actual game. You know, the big thing that can't be ignored, he's 25 and he just tore his ACL.
Yeah, exactly.
He's a good quarterback, and I probably would have him at my 5 if he wasn't 25 and just tore his ACL. Even if he hadn't just torn his ACL, he's a 25-year-old quarterback, so be it. Joe Burrow was drafted at 24.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a big deal, but where I do see, there's a huge drop-off from the number 4 to
exactly.
number 5.
Yeah, It's
very big. I think it's less in your grades than it is in mine. But my next quarterback is graded at 69.
So I have Hendon Hooker at a 78.
I have Tanner McKee and Hendon Hooker both at 69s, and I think where I prefer Tanner McKee, talk about prototypical size.
Yeah,
this guy's 6'6", 230. You're not gonna find a bigger quarterback in the NFL. This is Peyton Manning size.
Yeah.
This is Eli Manning size.
Trevor Lawrence, Justin Herbert,
size.
Josh Allen.
These guys succeed in the NFL at this height. Obviously, there are some that don't. Your Trevor Simeons, Brock Osweilers, who are huge, but just aren't very good. I think Tanner McKee actually has all the pieces to become a solid NFL quarterback. Mm-hmm. I think this guy, he's got great arm talent. Not as good as some of the top-end quarterbacks in this class, but I think the arm talent is there. He's got good mechanics. He's just got fantastic size. And that's the thing I like most about him. He's going to see over every offensive line, and he's got the ability to make reads. The stats aren't pretty. Again, he played at Stanford. I didn't expect the stats to be pretty.
Yeah, exactly.
But, he threw for almost 3,000 yards, which is more than Levis, which is more than Richardson. It's more than a lot of the quarterbacks in college football this year. And I think that, the 13 touchdowns to 8 picks, that's what happens when you play at Stanford. One touchdown a game is not very much, but Stanford quarterback's not going to throw very many touchdowns unless he's got great receivers, and no Stanford quarterback has great receivers. It just doesn't happen. So I think Tanner McKee, with that kind of size, it's a relatively high upside quarterback 5. I think the floor is very low. This guy could come into the league and be out of it within 5 years.
Yeah.
But I think that's the same thing with all the quarterbacks outside the top 4 this year. I think this guy's got upside at 6'6". this could be a really solid quarterback in your NFL. He's never going to be your, top 5 quarterback in the NFL, top 10 quarterback in the NFL, but he could be really solid. I really like that.
Yeah, I agree. But there we have it. Top 5 quarterbacks, obviously a little different, but so make you guys let us know what you think down below. But we'll move on now to our top 5 wide receivers. This one's really interesting. Again, me and Charlie have very similar lists. I think we generally are pretty similar when it comes to scouting in the draft. This list, I think, will maybe shock some people a little bit more.
I think maybe.
But at our 1, I have Quentin Johnson. I
got Jordan Addison
at 1. So for Quentin Johnson, I think this dude. And again, I was looking at the combine size. I don't understand if these the teams when they measure them just give them more height because they're always shorter when it comes to the combine.
I think combine he clocked in at 6'2".
Yeah, I think it was 6'3". Or whatever, 6'2", 6'3", but 6'2", 6'4" is like 6'2" is like all right, yeah, good size. 6'4" is like great big receiver, Mike Evans type. But yeah, I mean, when it comes to Quentin Johnson, I'm just a massive fan of him. I think the size to me and what so many people were talking about, like if he had a better quarterback than Max Duggan, this dude would have had he had 1,000-something yards. He would have had like 1,800
yards.
He would have had like 1,800 yards. Like Max Duggan, when you look at the tape, he missed so many times where Quentin Johnson was wide open. This guy is just a mismatch, and I think he will be super successful. He's one of those guys where he has the size and just the ability to be really good after the catch, which you just don't see for guys of his size. And then again, like the rating for him, really good route running. His release is very good. Good hands. Like he doesn't have many holes in his game. I think it just depends on if a team wants Quentin Johnson. It depends. Like there are very short receivers in this class, and there are Quentin Johnsons who are big, and I think it kind of depends on what the scheme fit is. But like for our Giants, I would absolutely love for them to get Quentin Johnson. I think he would be a fantastic fit for the Ravens. And my pro comp was Demaryius Thomas and like Mike Evans, I guess, just because of that sheer size. Where I tend to compare a lot of the big receivers coming to the draft to Mike Evans. Those go up jump ball receivers, but he was very, very good. I think the one knock was we were hoping for a sub 4.4 at the combine. I think he ran a 4.4 something, which still isn't bad for someone of his size. But I think if he ran that 4.3 in the 4.3s, he would have been the first receiver taken. But again, so that's what I have with Quentin Johnson. But I guess we'll go. Do you want to just go based on my list, and then you can just talk about where you have them? It's just easier to do. So
Quentin Johnson, he's my wide receiver 2, and he's a close second to Jordan Addison. I actually have them with the same grade. I just prefer Jordan Addison. For me, Quentin Johnson, the knocks are.
What's your grade for him?
They're both sitting at 89.
Oh, okay. See, I have a 94 for Quentin Johnson, which I think is high. I'm going to review that. I do think that's high.
I don't think that there's a wide receiver in this draft class that is elite wide receiver in the same conversation as Jamar Chase was.
Okay, I agree. And I think I agree.
And I think with a grade over 90, you've got a top 10 pick. And for me, like these guys aren't top 10 picks. But for me, Quentin Johnston, my knock on him is a little bit of the route running. He's sloppy at times when it comes to route running. He's slow at times when it comes to route running. Yes, his height is the big thing that everyone's looking at, and that he's a mismatch. But he's a mismatch in the college game. He's not a mismatch in the NFL game and now I know TCU was slaughtered by Georgia in the final, but Quentin Johnston was held to one catch for 3 yards. That's because Kelly Ringo is also 6'2", and you're going to see a lot more of that in the NFL. He's going to have to go against guys like Sauce Gardner, Tariq Woolen. More corners and more corners
are just getting bigger.
Are getting bigger and bigger. So the wide receiver being 6'2", 6'3" is not actually proving to be as much of a mismatch in the NFL game. Going against someone like Kelly Ringo, who is, I believe, the exact same size, height, weight, everything, and I think Kelly Ringo's faster. I don't see how he's going to survive that in the NFL. I think he has the tools to do it, but as of right now, I can't make him my number 1 because I don't think he's going to succeed at what he did in college in the NFL unless he changes it a little bit.
I agree, and again, these are obviously all of our rankings are subject to change, so I'm definitely going to go back because I do agree that 94 is a little high. I have a value on him as a top 20 pick. I do think this guy, could go in the top 10, but again, I think there are some receivers. Like the rankings don't. Like I think I agree that Addison will probably get taken before him, but that's our 1. So I have Quentin Johnson. We're going based on my list, so I have Quentin Johnson at 1. You have him at 2. But my 2 is not actually Jordan Addison. My 2 is Zay Flowers. So you have Zay
Flowers at 5.
Okay, so let's talk about Zay Flowers. So again, I really like this dude, and he's the top receiver of the small guys in this draft. You look at there are a ton of like 5'9", 5'8" receivers, but he's 5'9", 182. I don't know if you saw I think the NFL or someone posted just his transformation so far in the draft. Like he went from like 170 to 182. Like he's gotten big. Obviously 22-year-old senior from Boston College, but this dude's route running is fantastic, especially deep. Like this guy has incredible route running, really good hands, durability after the catch. He's fantastic, and he's a really shifty guy. Like he's really good. You'll see the smaller receivers here, like Jaden Reed, who I'm really high on out of MSU, Tank Dell, like the hezzy steps in the route where it makes that corner that one step slower. He's really good at creating separation. I really like Zay Flowers. I think he's a durable guy. I think he's someone who you can plug and play, and I think he'll be very successful. His tracking over the shoulders like Antonio Brown. I have my comp as Antonio Brown. Obviously, that's very out there, but I really like Zay Flowers. I would love the Giants could take him. Obviously, after losing Kadarius Toney, I think the Ravens would be a really good fit. I think the Seahawks would be a really good fit. I just really like him. I think this guy is a talent who's going to be electric. I think he's going to cause a lot of defense problems, and especially if you get a quarterback who has accuracy and strength downfield, this guy will be an absolute weapon for wherever he's drafted.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, my comp for Zay Flowers, I have him at 5. With a grade of 86. So
yeah, and I have him at a 90.
My 1 to 5 is 89 to 86. So they're all very close. I don't dislike Zay Flowers at all. I actually really like Zay Flowers. My comp for him is Wan'Dale Robinson.
Okay.
I think it's a very similar type player.
Yeah.
That's why I'm not so keen on the Giants taking him in the first round because we've already got Wan'Dale Robinson.
Right, that's a good point.
And we just signed Paris Campbell. I think very similar players. And the biggest thing that I dislike about Zay Flowers is I think a lot of us were expecting him to run better at the combine. I think he ran a 4.42 at the combine, and he was saying he was trying to run some like low 4.3s.
Yeah,
and he sets everyone's expectations up here, and then he just 4.42 is a very good time.
Like it's super fast,
but it's not that fast. It's not he's not game breaking speed. And I think there are, one guy I have above him, I won't get into it yet, but one guy I've got above him does have game-breaking speed.
Yeah.
And that's why I've got him there. And I think Zay Flowers is a very good prospect. He's a great route runner. You said it. He is potentially the best route runner in this class if it weren't for Jordan Addison. Mm-hmm. But for me, I have him at 5 because I just don't think that the spots, again, it's kind of similar to Quentin Johnson. I don't think the spots that he thrived on in the college game will translate as well to the NFL game with 4.42 speed.
Yeah. There we go. We'll move on now to my 3, where I have Jordan Addison, and he is your 1.
He's my 1.
Where I completely understand. I think my top 3 are very subject to change. I actually think this wide receiver class is I don't think anybody has a same top 5. The top 5. I think there are so many good receivers in this class, but I have Jordan Addison. Obviously, again, a guy who was supposed to be 6 foot, clocked in at 5'11", 173. So he's a thinner guy. You look at Zay Flowers, who's 2 inches shorter and about 10 pounds heavier. So he's definitely a thinner guy. Jordan Addison would have been the wide receiver 1, and there would have been a cliff to the next guys if he had the same production he did at Pitt. Last year, obviously, he was incredible with Kenny Pickett last year, and I think I've known about this guy for so long, and because when we were scouting for Kenny Pickett, he's throwing to Jordan Addison 50% of the time. Yeah. This guy's fantastic. You look at route running. Actually, we'll get into who I have as my top route runner in the class, but I think, again, right there with the best route runner in the class. Really good vertically. He's just he's a great receiver. You look at what he was. He was really good after the catch. He's just a highlight reel, waiting to happen. You look at the Jamar Chases like that. He was a highlight reel waiting to happen. Really good athlete, very refined player at USC. Was a big reason that Caleb Williams was so successful. It's just the production wasn't there as much this year. I'm not huge on him. You look at him in press coverage, this guy can get deleted from plays. He's a little skinny. He can get on press. He gets kind of shoved out of the play. And again, his 40 speed, I think was 4.48, 4.49, which isn't not super fast. But he's not that kind of guy. He's not a burner downfield. No. He's a route technician who's going to create space and get catches, which I love. I don't need a guy who's super good downfield. He's definitely a more polished receiver. And I think when you look at a comp, I like Devontae Smith, but also I think Stephon Diggs is a really good comparison. We know how successful he is. They're not guys who they can obviously get deep and they can gash the defense downfield, but also they're
more with
a
their
route
running
technician.
Ability.
That's what they're good at. Exactly. So that's what I have. I think the Giants would be a great fit for Jordan Addison. I think out of all the receivers, they're the guy you would want the most. And then I have Ravens and Seahawks. A lot of teams that need receivers. So those are my what I think about Jordan Addison. I really like him. But obviously you have him at your 1, so you take it away here.
Yeah, this is And it's a hard one because I don't think Addison is a true wide receiver one in a class. Because I think we've seen better receiver classes in the last few years. And this one, it's a little deeper and more consistent in the first round, but there's no top-end guy.
Yeah.
And I think for me, if I had to choose one, it is Jordan Addison. I think Devonta Smith is actually a really good comparison. I think we've seen Devonta Smith is not the tallest of guys, plus he's very skinny, ran just around a 4.5 40. But Devonta Smith burns people. It's with his route running ability, and I think Jordan Addison has that ability. He's the best route runner in the class, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think he's there.
I don't see many faults in Jordan Addison's game. You mentioned the one, and that's press coverage. He's tough to play press coverage, or he's very easy to play press coverage against once you can get your hands on him. He's gonna make it hard for you to get your hands on him because he's so good. His footwork is so good, but once you've got your hands on him, he's small, he's slight, you can take him out of plays. We've seen it happen with Devonta Smith.
Exactly.
He's gotten a lot better with it. He's gotten more physical and running through corners. And if Jordan Addison can make that step, I think he can be just as good as Devonta Smith and play in a Super Bowl. I think this is a very good wide receiver.
Yeah. And I think I agree with your point just about the wide receivers. I think most of these guys are high-end, maybe besides Quentin Johnson because of his size, are like high-end wide receiver twos. Like we saw, that's what Devonta Smith is in the NFL, and he's fantastic. So that's what I think these guys are, but it's really deep. So I think each time we have, like, you look at all the NFL drafts, like a position class will either be very top-heavy or deep and very and I think you kind of take it. I actually really like the depth. Like I like when you have depth. Yeah. But we'll move on now to 4, where I have Jalen Hyatt out of Tennessee, a guy who people either don't have in their top 5 or have him really high. You're one of the guys that have him high up in your. So you have him at 2, or you have him at 3. Excuse me. But I really like Jalen Hyatt. I think again the whole question mark. Sorry, we're just trying to get the charger so Charlie's computer doesn't die. The whole question mark with Jalen, or excuse me, not question mark. The whole thing with Jalen Hyatt is the speed. Like this guy is so fast and so much faster, I guess, than a lot of these receivers. Like this guy, what was his 40? 4.2?
Not in the 2s. I think it was just shy. I think it was.
I thought it was 4.2s. All right, whatever, low 3s. But this guy will be drafted. No, was it really a 4?
It's one of the players who a lot of the players this happens to. His game tape is so much faster.
Yeah, so
there's no corner in college or in the NFL who's just gonna be able to run with him.
Yeah,
and it's gonna be hard. You're not gonna want to play this guy in press coverage.
Yeah, I mean this guy is the fastest player in the class.
Yeah, yes.
Like out of all of them, like fastest player. This guy's an elite, vertical threat. That's what he's gonna be drafted for, to be a guy speed downfield, and he also has a size like 6 feet 176. Again, like a guy who is slight, I guess, but also taller, not like a 5'9" guy who you generally see as the game breakers downfield. But
he's an outside receiver, and he's gonna burn with that speed, and I think he could end up being a really good player.
Yeah, and I don't think he's the kind of guy who doesn't have a ton of holes. The production was there. Like he's again a guy who I don't have a grade below a B. I think this guy will be very, very good. I have him at an 88. I have him at an 88. I have Addison at 88.5, and I have Zay Flowers as a 90. So they're all very close. But again, he wasn't a guy who wasn't at the Senior Bowl, so we haven't seen him kind of face up, I guess, recently against NFL talent. But and I guess the one thing that you look at with Jalen Hyatt is he had like no tape against press coverage, where I think is, for me, when you look at a receiver, is super important. He only had 18 snaps against press coverage, and in those he only had 1 catch. So that might be a problem where we look at it with Jordan Addison, where he might just get deleted from plays. But this guy's a West Coast offense type of guy. He will be fantastic. He's very good after the catch, really elusive. I think this guy will be drafted to be a deep threat, and this guy is rapid. But you have him at your 3, so you have him one spot above.
I think that Jalen Hyatt, you mentioned he only had 18 snaps against press coverage. I actually think that's a really good thing in a lot of ways. I think it means teams are scared of him and they don't want him to burn deep because he doesn't have one route, right? He can do a few things, and when you play a guy with that kind of speed and press coverage, if he gets the step on you, it's a touchdown every single time. And I think that's what's going to make a lot of teams nervous. I think his route running ability combined with his speed. Now, he's not one of the best route runners in the class, but he's not one of the worst. He knows what he's doing out there. And with top-end speed that he has, I know he only ran a 4.4, but with that kind of top-end speed, he's not going to be facing much more press coverage in the NFL unless it's against guys who are.
But I feel like he might, because he can get corners. Like, I think when you look at like the corners, like you go up against a guy like Tariq Woolen, like I think stride for stride, like he'll be able to keep the length. You know,
Tariq Woolen is probably the one big exception because Tariq Woolen is the only mix of size and speed like that we've ever seen.
Yeah,
at
that's
6'4", runs a sub 4.3. It's Tariq Woolen is a different kind of.
I don't know
corner.
and obviously you watch tape on Jalen Hyatt, like you see like they run like a weird stack at Tennessee, like they stack it like, and again it's not like that's unheard of in the NFL, but it's just they ran that a lot. But so I want the route tree to definitely get expanded.
Any offense that operates with Jalen Hyatt is going to change their scheme just a little bit because changing a scheme for a guy who can get you touchdowns is something that happens. And I think if you line him up just a couple yards off the line of scrimmage with a receiver in front of him, it's going to be harder to press him.
Yeah.
And I think if they're going to try and play press coverage and he's 2 yards off the line of scrimmage, it's going to be a touchdown.
Yeah. And although I don't have him as high as some of these guys, I think he's a guy who could be a true wide receiver 1. Whereas I feel like Addison might, again, I think all these guys can be. That's why they're top prospects. But I do think Jalen Hyatt, like definitely when you look at him, could be. But yeah, I mean, I think this guy's going to be fantastic. We'll move down to where I'm sure all these people are wondering, where's Jackson Smith-Njigba? And here he is. So I have him at my 5. You have him at your 3. 4. I don't like Jackson Smith-Njigba that much. I think he's a good receiver. He is a very high floor. You know what you're getting. This guy's going to be productive, but nowhere near the best release in the class, nowhere near the best route runner in the class. This guy knew how to sit down in zones, get catches, pretty good at separation. I have him at not very fast. I just don't love him. I think he was very, and I don't love saying this, but I think the tape shows it so much when you look at it last year with like the stats he had. Like, yeah, it's undeniable. He was absolutely fantastic in the Rose Bowl, but I think he was a big benefactor of, Chris Olave and Garrett Wilson next to him.
I mean, he outshined them both.
Yeah, I know, but I feel like
yards.
I agree, but I think that was because they're giving their best corners to Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave. I do like Jackson Smith-Njigba. I think this guy is a first-round pick. I think he'll be a good receiver, but I think the upside for him isn't as great. I just didn't love him as much. Like I think he's super smart. He understands zone. He understands man. I wasn't like, wow. Like that's Ohio State, one of the best receivers we've seen in the past 10 years. Like he's up there. I just don't think he's up there with Olave, with Garrett Wilson, with Jalen Waddle, Jamar Chase. For sure.
No, the way I like to put it with Smith-Njigba is there's everything to like about this guy, but there's nothing to love about him.
Exactly.
He's you said it. He's you know what you're getting. He's going to be a good receiver, but will he be a great receiver? Will he turn into?
I think he could be though.
Chris Olave, Jamar Chase, Garrett Wilson. Who knows? It's possible, but I think there's less of a chance of that than some of the other guys that we have before.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just, again, Jackson Smith-Njigba, like, again, there's not many holes, but there's not that eliteness,
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Nowhere near the best route running, and like I said, best release. Like, he's a little bit slow, but again, I would say he's the smartest receiver in this class. Like, he understands zones. He understands how to, find the gaps in zones and get past man coverage. He's good after the catch. Obviously, we saw that in the Rose Bowl, why he was so successful, but, again, I think it all depends where he gets drafted to. I would really like the Jaguars. And again, a lot of people have him like to Chris Godwin. I think Godwin's a little more of a threat per se. I think he's a little better after the catch, but I think Chris Godwin, was the closest comp I could come to Smith-Njigba. He's an elite wide receiver too, and I think Njigba could be an elite wide receiver too. And in no way, you know me. We've been doing draft analysis together for the past 2 years. If I don't like a prospect, I will hate on him. I will not like them.
Oh, yeah. Dropped him to 55.
Dropped him to 55. Like who was it last year? Which quarterback was it last year? I forgot. I
don't remember.
But it was Mac Jones, who I hated. So like I am not afraid to say my opinion, but I do think Njigba definitely has some stuff there. Good size, 6'1", 196. Like definitely not a skinny dude. So I do like him there, but that's our top 5 receivers. Again, we'll just go over it again. I'll go over my 5 just to kind of wrap it up. So I have Quentin Johnson at 1, Zay Flowers at 2, Jordan Addison at 3, Jalen Hyatt at 4, and Jackson Smith-Njigba at 5. And we have our top 10 also, but just for the sake
then for my 5, I've got Addison, Johnston, Hyatt, Smith-Njigba, and Flowers. I think, It's the same 5 guys.
Yeah, same
They're
5 guys.
They're all really close. I think we can both.
Although
say
I love Tank
all
Dell.
5 of them are very close. But
we have it. But if you guys, again, we could do more. We'll obviously talk a ton of drafts, so we'll get into the other receivers. But that is our top 5. But speaking of that, Charlie, we're gonna move on now to a little bit different. We're gonna react to Daniel Jeremiah's mock draft. He recently released his mock draft 3.0. We'll just go over it quickly. We don't have to go over each pick. But again, he has first overall Bryce Young. Second overall, C.J. Stroud. No question marks there. We talked about it. It'll be one of those 2 guys. There's not much to talk about there. 3, he has Will Anderson. 2, the Arizona Cardinals, which I like. I think they need. They lost J.J. Watt. They lost Chandler Jones. That makes a ton of sense. Obviously, when we do our edge analysis, we'll go into depth with Will Anderson. Fantastic. And then they have Anthony Richardson at 4 to the Colts, which, again, we talked about. Shane Steichen, it makes sense.
Yeah, we did enough of our quarterback talk, so all I'll say is it's not the pick I would make, but you
have to understand if it works out, that would be
it's a
fantastic.
very
Exactly. And then at 5, they have Jalen Carter to Seattle. I don't know why I'm saying they. He has Jalen Carter to Seattle. Again, Jalen Carter is a blue chip prospect. This guy's fantastic, arguably the most talented player in this class. They need a defensive tackle. They need a pass rusher. I think this makes a ton of sense. Obviously, they have 2 first-round picks, so I like Jalen Carter there.
Yeah, I agree. I think this, just because of the I think
it has to be an edge
regarding the off-field concerns.
Yeah.
Jalen Carter would be a top 3 pick, but for me, because of the off-field concerns, this might be a pick where I go with someone like Tyree Wilson or Nolan Smith. But Jalen Carter, you can't deny the talent. It's clear and obvious, and it's a good pick.
Then at 6, they have Devon Witherspoon, who I love. Cornerback's my favorite position to scout. And Devon Witherspoon is. This guy's like Jair Alexander. This dude is fantastic. I for the Lions, I just love this pick. I think this guy, you pair him up next to Okudah. This guy, they lost Aruarie to the Giants. This guy, I think, is a fantastic pick here. But again, I could agree. How scary would it be? Say Jalen Carter fell, or for maybe Will Anderson fell, because some teams have Tyree Wilson ahead of him. But for the sake of it here, say they took Tyree Wilson. You have him and Aiden Hutchinson. That's 2,
that's great. It's good
ginormous men on the edge, 2 huge dudes. But I love Devon Witherspoon.
Yeah,
you gotta lock down.
I also really like Witherspoon. I think I haven't finished grading corners up yet, but Witherspoon's probably gonna be my number 2. I love Christian Gonzalez.
Yeah,
I'm gonna be honest.
But it's
Christian
1-2.
Gonzalez for me. Christian Gonzalez is the far and away 1.
Really?
I think Witherspoon is a very, very good corner, but for me, Christian Gonzalez is the best corner in this class. I think he has potential. I think when you look at corners when they get drafted, early corners, we get super excited about them. Jeff Okudah was one of those corners. For me, Christian Gonzalez is one of them too.
So you would take him over Devon Witherspoon?
I would take Christian Gonzalez over Devin Witherspoon. I think you look at those top quarterbacks, you look at the potential they bring. PS2, Jeff Okudah we talked about. I think Christian Gonzalez is not far behind them. I think Surtain and Okudah were one step above coming out of college, but I think Christian Gonzalez is right there with them, and this is going to be my highest rated corner in the draft. Here I would take Gonzalez. I think Witherspoon, my only concern is the modern corner size.
Yeah.
At 5'11 and a half, it's not small by any means, but I believe Gonzalez clocks in at 6'1 or 6'2.
Yeah.
For me, I like the big, fast corners. Yeah. And I think Christian Gonzalez does a better job being the other outside corner for Detroit than Witherspoon will.
I agree. I would take Witherspoon here, but I understand. I think Gonzalez and Witherspoon are they're my top 2 guys, but I agree there. Then at 7, the Raiders go Tyree Wilson. I think I really love Tyree. I mean, this dude, if you see it, he is so, he's 6'6", 240 or something. He's ginormous. I think it should be quarterback here. I think it should be Will Levis here, or a corner, maybe an offensive lineman. I guess the Raiders need a lot. I think they're kind of in a rebuild right now. I love Tyree Wilson, so I understand. I guess he's best player available, but I mean, this dude is a ideal power rush, mismatch. You don't see a lot of defensive ends who are as big as the offensive tackles they're going against. This dude is huge, and a mismatch on the offensive line or on the defensive line. So I really liked him. He's a redshirt senior, so he's the age of a junior. Has that experience there at Texas Tech. This dude was a disruptor. I like the pick here for the Raiders. They get a
I agree. I think quarterback is the wrong way to go for the Raiders here. I
guess, yeah.
I don't know how many people have seen it, but I believe Dylan and I posted a video last year talking about Mitch Trubisky to the Steelers, and then would they draft quarterback, would they not? And my conclusion was that why would you pay a quarterback if you're just going to go into the draft and grab one? And the Raiders are paying Garoppolo, I believe, more than the Steelers paid Trubisky.
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense for Garoppolo's proven he can win games too.
Yeah.
So it doesn't make sense for them to
Right, I
have a
like
quarterback
Garoppolo.
here.
Right.
And I think Tyree Wilson opposite of Max Crosby is a scary thing.
And
they tried
Chandler
to get
Jones.
that with Cleveland Farrell, who they drafted in the top 5 a few years ago. It didn't
And
end
they
up
have
well.
Chandler Jones as well.
They've got Chandler Jones.
Yeah.
They've got Max Crosby. This is a crazy addition to the pass rush.
And then again, they had at 8 the Falcons take Christian Gonzalez, which I like. But again, I think that could be flip flopped. I think I could very much see Gonzalez going at 7 to the Raiders and Tyree Wilson falling. But we talked about Gonzalez, fantastic prospect there.
I mean, Gonzalez and AJ Terrell might be the best cornerback duo
that would
in the
be
NFL.
fantastic. Then at 9, they have Peter Skoronski, offensive lineman to Chicago. This guy's the best tackle in the class. And again, they get pair him up with Justin Fields, who was getting killed. They need a tackle. I like Skoronski there.
Best tackle in the class, and for me, debatably the best player in the class.
And then at 10, the Eagles take Lucas Van Ness. And again, when we do our edge talk, we'll go into him. I just don't see the hype of Van Ness. I think this dude, I understand the raw physical traits, big dude, like ideal size, but he didn't start. Like, I don't understand. And here's the thing. He didn't start, but when he went in, he was the best defensive lineman on Iowa. And again, the Iowa have this weird like merit thing where like they give the senior players more play time. But again, I just don't love him. I think this guy would maybe be in my top 5. I think he would be, but he would be either 4 or 5. Again, I still have to iron out my edges, but I agree. The Eagles have a very good defensive line, so I would understand why this guy could come in and be a very, very disruptive player. I think this guy has a ton of potential, but I don't think he's a 10th overall value player.
Yeah, I think I'm with you on this one. So I think in terms of scheme fit, though, it makes a lot of sense. I think the guy I prefer at edge is Nolan Smith here.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the pro comps have been Nolan Smith that I really like or Hassan Reddick.
Yeah.
And the Eagles already have Hassan Reddick, so they don't need Nolan Smith coming off that other edge. It would be scary, but I think when you've got guys like Fletcher Cox, Jordan Davis, Brandon Graham, Hassan Reddick, you really don't even need to add another pass rusher, and I don't really understand why they're doing it. I think the better pick for them here would be like a Brian Branch or a Joey Porter.
Yeah, a corner.
Potentially add to that offensive line that's aging.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't love the Lucas Van Ness pick
or
here.
trade down here, honestly.
But and a potentially trade down. I don't love the Van Ness pick here, not because I think Van Ness is a bad player. I just don't see the scheme fit.
Yeah,
I just don't see it.
Then we move down, and the first receiver taken off the board, Jackson Smith-Njigba. We obviously talked about him earlier in the podcast. I like it. And again, he's a guy who, like they say it here, ready to make an immediate impact. I think the Titans need a receiver. So I like I understand the pick. I wouldn't be like, no way if Jackson Smith-Njigba was the first receiver taken. I do think he fits with the Titans, so I actually don't hate that pick.
I think the best fit with the Titans is Quentin Johnston, though.
Yeah.
I think we saw the success that A.J. Brown had in Tennessee, and when you find a similar player to A.J. Brown in this class, it's Quentin Johnston.
I think Jackson Smith-Njigba is close there, like same size. A.J. Brown's just a little bit more.
A.J. Brown's like 6'3".
No, A.J. Brown's 6. Really?
A.J. Brown is tall. I mean,
I don't think he's
closer to Quentin
6'3". Let's fact check now. Yeah, 6'1".
6'1", and
he's big.
227, which is a lot closer.
Jesus.
It's very, very close to Quentin
He's like
Johnston.
30 pounds heavier than
He's heavy.
Jackson.
He's a massive guy. And that's where I think Jackson Smith-Njigba, the Titans have receivers similar to him, like a Racey McMath or...
Yeah. And they obviously have...
who knows? They drafted Treylon Burks last year. Yeah. They haven't had success with the receivers since A.J. Brown left, and I don't think that's going to change this year.
And Treylon Burks, honestly, is like A.J. Brown. Like, he's a big...
he's more similar to A.J. Brown
exactly.
than Quentin Johnston.
Then again, we're talking more about edge. We have Myles Murphy going to the Texans at 12. I don't like the pick. I don't like Myles Murphy. I don't like his tape this year. I've heard of a guy for Myles Murphy. I've heard that this dude is elite. This dude is a Von Miller type guy. I just didn't see it. I think the year before, his sophomore year was fantastic, but this past year he just wasn't great. I don't love him. I don't love his size. But I think he's good. I think this guy can definitely be successful. But I think he's going on to a Texans defensive line where he will, like, there's not many good defensive, like, he's not where Lucas Van Ness has a ton of other counterparts. I think Nolan Smith will be the pick here, but I'm not a huge fan.
I think for me, Myles Murphy, the problem I have with him, and I haven't done all my edge look yet, but I think Myles Murphy is not as much of a pass rusher.
Yeah.
And it's a weird, to play edge in the NFL, you've got to be a great pass rusher, and Myles Murphy doesn't have that. He's more, he's not a third down rusher. He's not, he's not your rush end, and I think he's less likely to succeed in the NFL because of that.
Yeah. And exactly, and again, the upside there, I definitely understand. Then at 13, he has Nolan Smith, and I think to the Jets, I think the Jets get a fantastic pick here if Carl Lawson's healthy. Nolan Smith is like, this dude's he's a thinner, bendy, gets to the quarterback, really good. This guy's the best run stopper also of the edges. This dude's fantastic. He was really good for a Georgia defensive line. I think the Jets get an absolute fantastic pick here in Nolan Smith.
Yeah, I think they get a fantastic pick, but I think the wrong pick. I think this pick should go to the offensive line.
Yeah.
I know Serge would agree with me, but
Yeah.
I think with Broderick Jones and Paris Johnson on the board, one of them has to go. To go opposite Mekhi Becton, who's been riddled with injuries. I mean, someone called it.
Yeah.
But riddled with injuries. They lost George Fant. I think this has to go to offensive line because you want to be protecting.
Yeah.
If they're going to give Zach Wilson another chance, they got to be protecting Zach Wilson. Breece Hall, got to be protecting him, running behind him. Or running in front of him,
Yeah.
I guess. But you don't want him to get injured again. He was their best offensive player and was injured, I guess, by week 6.
Yeah.
Bad. I think this pick has to go to offensive line. I don't think the need is at edge rusher.
Yeah. And then at 14, the Patriots go, interesting enough, they go to go to Bijan Robinson, running back out of Texas. I mean, this dude is, fantastic. This dude is, I agree, I think one of the best running back prospects we've seen since Saquon Barkley. But yeah, I mean, I understand the pick. Again, you look at just what the Patriots need. This might not be the best selection there. Because where did Damian Harris go? He signed with the Bills. Yeah, Damian Harris is on the Bills now. So they need a running back. I like the pick here, but I think receiver, maybe you go one of the other edges left. Although again, there are not many edges I love left. So I do like the pick. I think you team up with Ramondre Stevenson. You have a good backfield there for Mac Jones.
Again, great player. Again, I'm going to say wrong pick. I don't think the Patriots will reach into the draft and grab some top-class elite player. Obviously, that sounds super stupid, but this is coming from a coach who drafted Cole Strange in the first round.
Yeah.
He's not going to go out and grab a flashy player.
Yeah.
I don't think. I think he could add to the tackle room. I know they have a good offensive line, but he could add to the tackle, defensive line, potentially go reach at a linebacker. I really like Drew Sanders out of Arkansas. I think he could go for someone like that, maybe a Trenton Simpson.
Yeah.
But maybe Brian
14
Branch.
would be high.
I know Devin McCourty's retiring.
Yeah.
So maybe a Brian Branch I really like pick here, but I don't think that Bijan Robinson would be going to the Patriots, and I don't think it's the right pick. I think Ramondre Stevenson's got their backfield locked up, and I know they like a dual back system, but for me, Bijan's not even my top running back. We won't go into that too much, but he's not my RB1 in this class.
Yeah. And then we have Paris Johnson to the Packers. Again, I agree. I think this is the wrong pick. I think he needs to be a receiver. I think it needs to be a receiver. Again, we don't know what's happening with Aaron Rodgers, but tackle obviously is a question. Paris Johnson is a fantastic tackle. I think he's the number 2 in this class. But I think he needs to be a receiver here. And I think there are all the guys besides Jack Smith and Jigba are still here. I think it would just be a waste to take a tackle here.
I think with this board, I agree. I don't think it needs to be a receiver, though. I think with Christian Watson emerging as a star last year, I don't think we need a receiver at Green Bay.
But I just think if you get like a Zay Flowers here or a counterpart to Christian Watson, I think
they definitely could add to this receiver room. And
Yeah.
I think Paris Johnson, while it's a good pick, I think I'm with you. I think it's probably the wrong pick for them.
Yeah. Then at 16, we have tight ends who I really haven't done that much, but they take Dalton Kincaid out of Utah. Again, I've just never been a fan of tight ends, and I know it's stupid. I just think it's a really boring pick. But again, they take him high here at 16.
I can't understand this pick.
Yeah.
I can't understand if you're going to take a tight end, how you're not going to take Michael Mayer. He's the
Yeah.
best tight end in this class.
Yeah.
And I've done tight ends, and Dalton Kincaid is a very good too. But, I mean, Michael Mayer's better. And I think for the Commanders, it makes sense. I think they've got actually a better roster than a lot of people think.
Yeah.
And tight end is one of those holes that they could add a really reliable pass catcher for Sam Howell.
There we go. At 17, at 17, Broderick Jones goes to Pittsburgh. This one, the Steelers would take a tackle.
Absolutely,
I like the pick here.
ideal
Broderick
pick.
Jones, great pick. Then at 18, the Detroit Lions take Kalijah Cansey out of Pittsburgh. Again, a guy who I haven't done a ton of research on, but I think it's a fit here. You talk about, obviously, because he's Pitt, people compare him to Aaron Donald, not as big of a dude. But again, I would have much rather you take, because you look at the board, I would have much rather you take a Tyree Wilson, up there. Maybe you see if Jalen Carter falls, and then you take the corner here. But I like the pick. I think it's a need, and I think he fits in well.
Yeah, I am not high on Kalijah Cansey. Now, I haven't looked at Kalijah Cansey too much, unlike you, but I'm seeing Kalijah Cansey consistently getting mocked in the top end of the first round.
Again, he's one of those guys that jumps up.
This is not a guy who was some crazy college player. He just wasn't.
It pisses
don't
me off
see
how
it.
much the combine affects, which I guess it makes sense, but the combine can shoot someone up 2-3 rounds.
I just don't see it. And the pick I honestly really like for the Lions here is Will Levis. If he's not gone off the board and they're waiting at pick 18, I think the Lions have a very good roster right now. And to take Will Levis, and I know a lot of people think the Lions are going to be really, really good this year, but I don't think they're going to win anything with Jared Goff. And I think
I disagree.
If the
I like Jared
Lions,
Goff.
if the Lions don't get out to the hottest start of the season, maybe they win 2 of their first 8 or so, which I see them winning more. But maybe you turn to a Will Levis. And Jared Goff, he can win. I don't think it'll happen, but he can win. If he's not winning, you're not going to give him a second and a third and a fourth chance because it's not Patrick Mahomes. This is Jared Goff.
Yeah. Then at 19, speaking of Will Levis, he goes to Tampa Bay, who just signed Baker Mayfield. It's just a weird quarterback room. Then you have Kyle Trask, who really has never gotten an opportunity. You obviously have Baker Mayfield. Yeah, you have Baker Mayfield, then you have Will Levis. So I like the pick. I think it fits. I think they need a quarterback.
Whatever.
At 20, the Seahawks take the next receiver off the board. And it is Jordan Addison. I like the pick. I think it fits. I think Zay Flowers might be a better pick here, but Jordan Addison kind of will be the predecessor to Tyler Lockett. You have DK Metcalf there. You have 2 very, very good receivers. And again, DK Metcalf, even though he's huge, is kind of that downfield dude. I think Jordan Addison can kind of be more of the short route technician who can kind of just get separation. But I love that pick here. This is a fantastic receiver room, especially for a team that is looking to win a Super Bowl sooner than later.
Yeah, I actually really like the Addison pick here as opposed to the other receivers. And that's because I think it gives, with Addison, Metcalf, and Lockett, you never know what set they're going to come out in. Any of the 3 of them could play in the slot. And any of the 3 of them can play on the outside.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be...
I like the compliment. I think it works well.
Yeah, it's Metcalf, Lockett, and Addison's going to be really, really hard to game plan against. It's going to be a mismatch for all defenses.
Yeah. Then we have a run on receivers. We have Zay Flowers going to the Chargers at 21, which I like. Again, I think it's very good in the description here. They have that the Chargers don't like smaller receivers. You've seen who they drafted, Josh Palmer, obviously Mike Williams. But again, explosive element. This dude, again, we were looking like last year, we wanted them to take one of the smaller guys like maybe a Jalen Waddle. And obviously that ended up not working out. But I think Zay Flowers is a fantastic pick here. This dude will be, or excuse me, Jalen Waddle was 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Who was it last year? I just forget their, whatever. It doesn't matter. But they were looking for one of the, I don't know why I'm blanking on the receivers, but so I think again for the Chargers, I think it's a great pick. I think it adds another weapon to Justin Herbert's kind of tree, which he hasn't really had. So I like the pick there.
Yeah, me too.
Then we have the Ravens taking Joey Porter, 3rd cornerback off. I love Joey Porter because he has that that top corner dog alpha mentality. Like he'll talk to you, he'll talk trash. I like it here. I think the Ravens. Just makes a ton of sense, and I really like it.
Yeah, I think for the 2nd year in a row, the Ravens will be getting a steal of a defensive pick.
Yeah.
Last year, they grabbed Kyle Hamilton.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
He was great last year, and I think Joey Porter is not as good as Kyle Hamilton, but he's a really good player. And I think he could easily go before 22. So the fact that they're getting him at 22 is a very good pick for me.
Yeah, I love the pick there for the Ravens. Then we have Hendon Hooker going at 23 to the Vikings. I don't hate it. The thing is, though, he's not going to be he won't be healthy until August. I just don't know. He's 25. They cut Kellen Mond. I forgot.
Yeah, your favorite.
Yeah, my favorite quarterback ever to come out of college. But again, I just think that's a waste of a pick. I like Hendon Hooker, but it's just it's not worth it. So
I think the Vikings could do so many things with this pick 23, and to go to Hendon Hooker to sit a year behind Kirk Cousins. I don't know. I don't love it.
But I actually do think that there could be some success there. 24, I love it. The Jaguars take Deonte Banks out of Maryland. I love this corner class. Deonte Banks is just another guy who I absolutely love. Again, he was phenomenal at the combine. The tape backs it up. This dude is a really, really good corner. Sticky. I think it makes a ton of sense here. I think they need a corner. I think they'll take a corner. Deonte Banks ends up being the guy that's there. I love the pick there. I think this dude is going to be a very, very... I think all the top 5 guys are going to be really good in the NFL, and I think Deonte Banks has potential to be the best cornerback out of this class.
Yeah, he's fast. He's physical. He's aggressive.
Good size, 6'1".
I think this is a guy who could look like a J.C. Horn.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I really like Deonte Banks, too. I think this is a good pick for the Jaguars.
Great pick. And he can obviously pair it with Tyson Campbell. At 25, the Giants take Joe Titt. So here's the thing. Me and Charlie, as you can see, Giants fans, the Giants take Joe Tittman, inside offensive line out of Wisconsin. I just don't know this dude very much. It's not that it's not a need. I just don't like I like my team to take interesting players. But again, Charlie, we can't hate on the pick. I think it should be a receiver here. If Quentin Johnson's here, I would be pounding the table for that pick. but we don't get it.
The guy that I'd be pounding the table for at this pick is, I know we love taking interesting players, but Osiris Torrance.
Yeah, obviously inside.
Osiris Torrance is my number 2 offensive player in this draft class.
Yeah.
Osiris Torrance is incredibly good.
Yeah.
This guy is, I have him graded at a 94. This guy is ridiculous. He's the best run blocker in the class.
Yeah.
I don't see how, if you're going to take an inside offensive lineman anyway, this is a guy I haven't even looked at yet,
Yeah.
Joe Tippmann. I haven't even heard that name. I'm going to be honest. Osiris Torrance is going to become a household name for one of the best guards in the NFL. And I know it's risky taking guards in the first round, but if they're going to do it anyway,
you might as well take the best
why
one.
would you not take the best one? And he's the best one by a lot.
Yeah.
I don't think anybody else is a round 1 pick. I don't think anybody else is potentially even a round 2 pick, except for potentially someone like Steve Avila or Jackson Kirkland. Definitely not Joe Tippmann.
Yeah.
I don't see it. I'm sorry. This is a horrendous pick.
Then at 26, the Cowboys take Mozzie Smith out of Michigan, defensive tackle. Again, I think there are better picks.
But I think also think a much better defensive tackle than Kalijah Kancey.
Oh, okay, right. And then at 27, the Bills get a freaking steal in Quentin Johnson, who I have as my wide receiver 1. That would be very, very scary. Obviously, there's been the weird stuff with Stephon Diggs where he unfollows the Bills, follows the Cowboys. I don't know what's going on there. I hate how NFL players are just so cryptic like that. But Quentin Johnson, that would be an elite addition. You have that wide receiver room's huge. They obviously have Gabe Davis, Quentin Johnson. They have obviously Stephon Diggs, and then I'm completely forgetting who they took out of SMU, out of Boise State last year.
Oh.
Why are we forgetting? We loved him. Dave. Oh my God, it's so annoying because we talked about him all the time. But yeah, I think it's Quentin Johnson's a steal at 27. But now we have at 28, the Bengals take offensive tackle for, again, another year in a row, and it's Darnell Wright out of Tennessee. I really like the pick here. I really like him as a left tackle. Obviously, Orlando Brown. They obviously just got Orlando Brown, but you add in Darnell Wright onto that offensive line, it'd be fantastic. Khalil Shakir. But obviously they have Jonah Williams, who requested a trade, and they obviously have Collins, but I believe he's also a tackle. They obviously signed out from Dallas last year. I guess they might move him inside. I like to pick a Darnell Wright. Again,
I
not
think
super interesting, not much to talk
2
about.
picks in a row, the guy I would have taken is someone who I've been mentioning since around pick 10. It's Brian Branch.
Yeah.
I think the Bills, we saw the injuries they had defensively last year. They could use Brian Branch in that secondary. The Bengals as well, losing Jesse Bates.
Yeah.
They're going to have to turn to guys like Dax Hill, who I think is a good player.
Yeah.
But Brian Branch has the versatility to play slot corner, nickel corner, safety. I like Brian Branch.
At 29, we have finally your guy Michael Mayer, tight end, going to New Orleans. I'm not, I'm not a huge fan of again, like I said, tight ends, but it's a very stupid thing to do as an analyst to say that, but I think it's a great pick. I agree he's the best tight end, most complete. Derek Carr, you just got
easily
adds some strength there. Then at 30, the Eagles take another edge. In Felix Anaduke Uzama, who I really like. I actually really, really like him. I would like him more than Lucas Van Ness. He's super good. Really good numbers, really good motor, bendy guy, good size. I like the pick here. And again, you have Brandon Graham and Fletcher Cox both on 1-year deals, so I guess they're kind of building for the future. And the Eagles are so well-rounded. It's just that defensive line would be fantastic now. I mean, that defensive line would be so good. But I like the player. The pick, I guess, doesn't make a ton of sense, but I really, really like him as a prospect.
I think with Quentin Johnson on the board,
he's not on the board.
Pick.
No, Johnson.
Or with Jalen Hyatt on the board,
yeah,
it's a better pick because I think Jalen Hyatt's a better deep threat than Quez Watkins is.
Yeah.
So I think for them to take one edge rusher, I wouldn't have done it, but I understand it. They've got aging guys on 1-year deals, but to take 2 just makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
It just I can't understand that.
And then at 31, we don't have the luxury of getting 32 picks in this year's draft, but at 31, the Kansas City Chiefs takes Will McDonald. I really like him out of Iowa State. I think he's like a Harold Landry type guy, like outside linebacker, thin, really bendy. I love the pick here. Obviously, Frank Clark no longer on that team. I think Will McDonald could be a really, really good edge rusher. I'm really excited to see him. I think he's a first-round guy. Obviously, the edge rushers I still have to polish, but this guy will definitely be in the top 5. I'm a big, big fan of him.
Yeah, no,
he's
agree.
a bender,
I really
as
like
they
Will
say.
McDonald, and I think it's a good pick for the Chiefs. They need help on that pass rush, and I think it makes sense for them to go Will McDonald.
Yeah, I like the pick here. All right, I have to end it here. Thank you all so much for watching. Kean McDermott, Charlie Nidell. Let us know what you guys think down below. Obviously, thank you so much. We got an hour. We got an hour in. We do podcasts. Generally, we don't do an hour. So thank you so much.
More because the first clip.
Yeah. So thank you so much for watching. Obviously, clips will be coming out. We post stuff on Instagram, and then again, more podcasts are coming out. Me and Charlie are going to be the faces of the draft this year.
Yes, sir.
So make sure you guys stay tuned. As I said, if somehow you made it to the end, our draft live stream, April 27th. Make sure you guys are there on YouTube. We obviously put so much work into it, so we're starting that up. So make sure you guys stay tuned for that. Thank you all so much for watching or listening, and we will see you next time.